Hello, fellow artists and art enthusiasts. Welcome to Where 2D and 3D Meet.
A podcast about art, what it is and what it means to us.
I'm Kelli Collins. I have a BFA in 2D media.
And I'm Jenna Coffin. I have a BFA in sculpture.
Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to zero. He's our powers magnified, and he's fighting on the planet side.
My favorite is still the what did it say? No, there's pollution down to zero, yeah. Put asunder, yeah.
Put asunder.
We're gonna help him put asunder bad guys who like to loot and plunder.
This is great. This is this is our episode. Is this just the beginning of the episode? And we just don't cut it. We need to ask Cadence.
Yeah, we have to ask Cadence.
You're like, should we cut this? Just let us know what you think.
Because nobody knows what we're doing yet.
And if this does make it into the final cut, I'd like to take a minute to say, hey viewers, you should totally put in the comments what you think about it.
Oh my gosh.
There. Put the actionable thing in there.
Yeah, call to action. About Captain Planet, and they don't know what we mean yet.
For those of you that are too young to have known Captain Planet, just Google it. You'll love it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Back to the episode. Okay, you start out.
Okay. There are two parts of all art: the message it's trying to convey, and the medium, the way it conveys that message. How the medium or mediums have been used, combined, and arranged to create a work are called formal aspects. The elements of design are the building blocks of the formal aspects of visual art. The elements of design are color, value, texture, line, shape, form, and space.
Color is the light reflected into our eyes from the objects we're looking at. The wavelength of the light determines what color we see. It's how we see things.
All the things. Okay, so a 2D example of a piece that uses good color is Mark Rothko, his piece number 14. This is part of the Color Field series, and they're all about how the color makes you feel. They're painted on large canvases, so when you stand in front of them, you're enveloped by the color. This is kind of a pure experience of color without many other elements getting in the way, and I think it's really effective. They can be really emotional when you're looking at them.
Okay, for our 3D example, because we're switching it up, is an installation piece by Alex Decourt called The Decorated Shed. He uses bright colored fabric on walls to inspire thoughts of childhood and childhood wonder, while the centerpiece is this replica of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I saw this at the Biennale, the 2019 Biennale, Venice Biennale specifically. I should be specific, there are other Biennales. So while you're there, you're completely surrounded. This room is completely surrounded in this thick padded walls covered in colorful cloth, and there's these neon glowing stars on this really high ceiling, and it really makes you feel like this childhood and like you're a child. And then the replica of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood is lit up with signs of various fast food restaurants. So that's like familiar and yet kind of eerie. There's like this sort of busyness to it from the fast food restaurant signs, but like it's a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood, so there's like next to no people. It's supposed to be like this quiet neighborhood, so you get a kind of quiet that feels out of place. It's
Like it should be busier because of the
The
restaurants?
fast food restaurant signs, it should be busier, but it's not. And so, yeah, you get this kind of like really colorful, like the color, everything about this is the color is kind of like influencing you to think in like this childhood way and this childishness, while that color is so like vibrant and like busy that it feels like there should be like noise in some way, like children noise or like city noises, when it's just the fabric and everything on the walls makes everything super quiet in that room.
Okay, so next we have value, which is the lightness or darkness of a color. Value is really important for showing contrast between different parts of an artwork.
One of the best examples for 2D value is black and white photographs. Some of my favorite black and white photographs are Martina Gutierrez's Body and Thrall series. It has a lot of black and white photos that have a really dramatic effect to the high contrast in those photos. They're originally part of a magazine that she produced called Indigenous Woman, but for the Biennale of 2019, some of the pages were printed like 10 feet tall, giving this extra air of lavishness. She poses with mannequins, and there's a lot of like sexualization, which is really weird, kind of off-putting with the mannequins, but it has a very vintage look too because of the black and white ness.
Then for 3D, we have Michelangelo's David. There's deep carving in the eyes, the ears, and the hair curls, and they give the contrast needed to show the different parts of David, even though the stone is all one color. The David is 17 feet tall, which is way taller than you think. It's like 2 stories. So, but even from that distance, you can see the expression on David's face, which you really need in order to understand the sculpture and for it to be effective. The carving in of the pupils is a technique that sculptors use a lot to give it that darkness if they're not going to be painting it or using different materials.
Okay, so the next one is texture. Texture is the visual and physical qualities of a surface. The 2D example I have is Christian Marclay, who used wood grain as sort of a stamp alongside aggressive anime and comic book collages in their piece Scream Blade. It's a unique use of texture combined with a usually textureless style of drawing. Each piece is about sound, and he uses that texture to kind of amplify the sound of each piece. That's why, like, the piece has like screaming drawing of cartoon characters, and so like the whirling of the wood is supposed to kind of amplify that sound, that scream. I think it's really well done as far as that goes, because it really does kind of like as much as you can see sound, it kind of has a screaming feel to it.
For 3D texture, we have Marble Pillows by Figueres. I think that's how you say his name. Each of the pillow sculptures are carved from marble using real pillows for reference. He takes great care to make them appear smooth, fluffy, and crinkled in just the right ways. I feel like I could just lay down on one and take a nap. The juxtaposition of the hard stone with the soft pillow look makes them really delightful for me.
All right, the next one is lines, and lines can be straight, curved, thick, thin, dashed, and all things in between. They can even be invisible by just implying that they exist.
So, for lines we have Soul of Wit, Wall Drawing 17. Each column drawn on the wall has lines drawn in the same direction, and then each column changes the direction. So this is a close-up of it here, and you can see the diagonal lines on it. Lewitt was a conceptual artist, so his works are made either by him or what he called a draftsman, who would follow his plan, these like written instructions. The lines on the wall combine together and bring movement to the piece, or if you stand back, they blend together and create a value.
So for the 3D example of lines, we have Travis Strachan's Robert, who created a skeletal body using lines of neon, which is, he used this to make a sculpture to commemorate the first African-American astronaut who died in a training accident in 1967, Robert Henry Lawrence Jr., who was largely left forgotten by history. Strachan's work revolves around truth and visibility in our history, so the neon feels like it's literally bringing to light a piece of history that's been largely left in the dark. And these lines of neon really make this body feel real and energized at the same time, like agonized. Like the way that it's bent backwards is just kind of
Unsettling.
unsettling, painful. Like it's both. It's like watching a train wreck. You just can't take your eyes away from it, but at the same time, it's just unsettling and painful to look at.
Especially in that.
But at the same time, it's like really cool in this dark room. All by like, especially like when I was there, I got there at like a lull in the crowd, so there wasn't any people there. So I got to take pictures of it all by myself, and it was just like the lines just create this kind of like really energize you, like you can the curvature of the body that they made is just both energizing and yet disturbing.
So building on lines, the next element is shape. Shapes are made of lines put together to make an area that's separated from the area around it. Shapes can also be implied like lines can.
So for a 2D example, we have Wasily Kandinsky. Vasily Kandinsky. He's Russian. Composition number 8. I chose a famous abstract work. I haven't seen this one specifically in person, although I have seen a Kandinsky in person. This is just the one that everybody's going to know. Kandinsky used both outlines as well as implied lines to create a bunch of different shapes in his Composition 8. He was really interested in studying the interactions between the basic elements, such as geometric shapes, lines, color, and Christian spirituality. Greatly influenced his artwork as well. His first 7 compositions had to do with the apocalypse and the coming of a new age.
So for 3D, here we have Reclining Nude by Richard Stainthorpe. He makes metal sculptures of figures. This is obviously a sculpture of a person, but it has a strong implied triangle with her head as the top point. This lends the sculpture the strengths that a triangle has, which are visual interest and a wide, solid base. The figure feels relaxed and stable. You don't worry that she's gonna fall over. She feels calm.
Okay, so building up even further, we have form, which is a 3-dimensional shape or a 2-dimensional representation of a 3-dimensional shape. If you remember from episode 2, trompe-l'oeil works are great examples of form. Nicole Eisenman's Morning Studio uses shapes and lines together as well to trick the eye into thinking the objects are 3D. Morning Studio is one of my favorite pieces, and I spent probably a good 2 to 3 hours studying it. And the way that Eisenman meticulously renders objects. She pays attention to the smallest of detail, from the texture of jeans to the exact way a milk carton would be, slightly indented in the bottom, and the way that wires come down from the computer or Mac, and then like the text of a file saved on this painted computer desktop. Like, it literally says, like, image underscore 42213.jpg. It's
So detailed.
so detailed, just like everything is so meticulous. It looks printed instead of painted. Like, like, that the text is that meticulous, and to be able to paint that like that is just, I really, really love her work and admire her as an artist.
It's interesting too because that's in the background and it's not like the main focus of the image, but she's put so much detail into it.
Yeah, it's just like every little bit of detail on everything is just paid so much attention to, compared to, like, it's not just the main focus, the two women. It's the, like, couch cushion that they're on has like these great textures to indicate that it's made of like the kind of couch material. And the fact that she's paying this much attention to just background stuff really brings the whole of the painting into being, and it really makes you feel like you're in the room with them, because this is like life size. Like, these two women are life sized, so everything is sized to be like it's supposed to be. I literally had a hard time with that crate in the front. Like, it really fooled it. I kept looking at it being like, it's not a crate. I know it's not a crate, but it looks like it's coming out of the painting.
like that it was glued on there or something.
Yeah, right? Like, it was just like gonna pop right out and like poke me.
So for the 3D one for this, we have Richard Serra's piece Sequence. I got to see this in person in San Francisco Museum of Modern Art a few years ago. Richard Serra uses large metal sheets to make these sweeping forms, and viewers are invited to walk around and inside the pieces, experiencing the form up close and getting to understand it in a new way. Walking the pathway through, the walls tilt towards or away from you in a way that we aren't used to in architecture, and it made me feel really unsettled at the beginning, like I was tilting the wrong way, like gravity was wrong. And then it began to feel like a secret path, like the kind I loved as a kid. Anytime they were in movies or anything, a kid gets to run through this secret tunnel and find something
Narnia.
amazing at the end. Yeah, exactly. So I spent a long time walking around in it, just feeling the form. It was really cool. Okay, finally we have space. How forms, shapes, and lines are arranged in relation to each other. This is often described as positive and negative space, positive being the lines, shapes, or forms, and negative being the space between them.
So for the 2D example, I brought to the table Michael Armitage's Untitled series. So Michael Armitage uses both negative and positive space to make recognizable forms. These are based on photographs that were taken while he was in Kenya. That was prior to the 2017 Kenya general election. His drawings depict the chaos of the political rallies of the time, and I really like the way that he implies lines in the negative space, and the way that he uses the negative space around the figures to kind of enhance the chaos of the piece in the center, but also kind of doesn't make it too overwhelming. It's easy to focus on the main subject with all that negative space surrounding it.
Those are really cool.
Yeah, they almost look like coffee stains.
Yeah. I was going to say it's like
Like-
coffee colored, like sepia ink of some kind.
Yeah.
For the 3D example of space, we have Jesse Darling's March of the Valedictorians. It uses negative space under the chairs with thin, spindly-legged positive space. This makes the piece look unsteady, yet the lofty height of the chair seats gives an air of achievement or pride for these valedictorians. The negative space is fractured into small pieces by the chair legs and their odd angles, but they all march forward together. You saw this one in person too, didn't you?
Yeah, so they're about, I would say, 10 feet off the ground, 10 to 12 feet off the ground each.
Like way above the
Yeah, it's above your head for sure, by quite a bit, like a half of another person or more. It's really interesting. You walk around it and like some of them are kind of leaning towards each other, like they're using each other to help keep each other aloft. So I thought that was really interesting that they kind of supported each other, but at the same time they were so like
unstable themselves.
It's kind of like hard to think of the idea of like somebody that's already unstable helping another unstable person stay stable, but they kind of like leaned against each other in certain ways. But yeah, it's you think that they're going to fall over, but at the same time it feels so triumphant. It's an interesting juxtaposition.
Color,
value,
texture,
line,
shape,
form,
space.
Go art! By these powers combined, we are the elements of design!
Oh my gosh. Okay, all of these elements come together to make the composition of the artwork and communicate the meaning of the piece.
Knowing these building blocks can help you to better interpret and speak about art. We'll be using these terms in future episodes, but don't worry, we won't test you on them.
That's the end of this episode. Stick around till the end for a sneak preview of the next Patreon exclusive episode. I'm Jenna Coffin.
And I'm Kelli Collins. Our amazing music and the editing for the podcast are done by Cadence of the Blade. You can find him on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cadence of the Blade.
If you'd like to contact us, you can email us at where2d and3dmeet@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. If you'd like to see our artwork, you can find me at withkoji.com/@Jenna_Coffin.
And you can find me at kellykcollins.com. This podcast is brought to you by our patrons. Without our patrons, we wouldn't be here, so thank you to our Medici family members, Eric Huntsman and Norman Beverstock.
If you'd like to support us too, head over to patreon.com/where2d and 3D meet, where you can get early access to episodes, join our Discord server for art discussions with us, and get exclusive episodes. Links can be found in the description below.
Thank you to all of you for listening. We hope you'll join us next episode, where 2D and 3D meet. So I saw this meme a while ago and it said, I wonder if my ancestors are smiling upon me sometimes. Somebody replied, you, making a little thing with clay,
It's so
the
weird.
ghost of Australopithecus. Yes, 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 yes. And then somebody else replies, Mesopotamian souls going apeshit and cheering in the netherworld. Clay, 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 clay.
That's how I feel about clay, for sure.